Well, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everybody, and welcome to a pretty special episode of the Photo Joseph's Photo Moment, or whatever it is we're calling the show these days. Welcome. We have a small little camera announcements to talk about today, don't we? Why don't we get a quick little shout out in the live chats? Let's make sure that everybody can see and hear everything all right, and then we'll just get into the meat of this thing. So just first off, in the live chat, tell me where you're calling in from. Let's make sure that you can hear me, that you can see me, that we're actually live, because when you're doing a live stream, it's kind of an important part of it. So let's just see what's going on in the chit chat room. We had a few people waiting in the background beforehand. Let's just pull this up here, get that chat up and running. Jason Papab, welcome again. Always good to see you, my friend. Always good to have you here. Let's see here. Lezunter says, have not been... nice to have been back and not been active for the past couple of shows. Yeah, my show schedule's been a little bit erratic lately because I've had, the last couple of weeks, I had meetings every morning for 2 weeks solid, starting at 7 a.m. and going till noon. And one of those days one week I did do an evening show, and then another week I was just like, I'm just too tired for this. But anyway, we're here trying to be on a normal-ish schedule, but you know how that is. Normal's boring. Normal is boring. 95 says, looking forward to this. As an aside, do you know if the GH5 and G9 are doing any firmware updates? Yeah, we'll come to that in a moment here. Let's go scroll ahead here and see where people are calling in from. So we've got Cyber Shadow in Germany. Awesome. Hyped about the GH6. Me too. Always cool. I will admit, I wish we knew a little bit more. I wish I had more to tell you, but I don't. But it's still cool. At least we know it's coming. That's the biggie. Mesa, Arizona. Awesome. High in rainy England. Fabulous. Dublin, Ireland. Loving it. Let's see, everybody's good and fine. People are confirming. Look at that. We got people all over the place. Florida, Uganda, nice. San Juan, Puerto Rico. I have got to get there one of these days. So many places to go to. Roseburg, oh, practically a neighbor. Edinburgh, very nice. New channel, discontinued. Okay, so real quick, for anybody who is trying to figure out why where we are in the live and the who's and the what's it. Okay, a while ago, it's been a while now, but I know this is still new for a lot of folks. I set up a whole new channel just for live. So that's what this is, the Photo Joseph live channel. If you are not subscribed here, do me a favor, hit that subscribe right now. Hit the thumbs up too. Share it, tell a friend. But let's get you subscribed to this new channel. The old channel is where all uploads go. I'm not doing live on that channel anymore. Now I am, at this very moment, simultaneously streaming to the old channel with a big old nasty overlay that says, "This is not the show you're looking for." Scroll down, there's a link to the proper live show where there is the chat enabled and everything else. That's where you want to be. So I see there's a handful of you over there watching on the other show. Please back out of there, come over here to the right place, and all will be good in the world. And for some reason, my stats are not working on the right video, but that's okay. Let's just get this thing up here. It's funny. It's like, tells me nobody's here, and yet there you all are. Anyway, so that's the deal there. So make sure you subscribe to both channels. It's really simple. It's the youtube.com/PhotoJoseph and youtube.com/PhotoJoseph Live. Those are the two channels. Get them both. All right. Moving on, let's see here. North Carolina, normally from Maryland. Awesome. Haven't been around much lately. Happy to be here. Excellent. Happy to have you here. Oslo, Norway. Love that. You know, one of these days, I keep forgetting. I got to bug Aaron Parecki, and he actually did give me access once, but I think he's changed it, and I never actually used it. Anyway, his map thing, for those of you that watch Aaron's live show, when everybody's coming in, they say where they're from, and it pops up on a map. That's the coolest thing ever. I gotta get that set up. Milan, look at that. Boise, Idaho. Happy Africa Day. I did not know it was Africa Day. That is awesome. Milan, look at people from everywhere. I love it. So much fun. Okay. So clearly, y'all can see and hear me. That's good. Let's jump into some of the questions. So the first question that came up, actually first, before I even get into that, let's just have a little bit of a moment of what's going on today. Oh, did something happen? Did something happen? Why, yes. Panasonic announced 2 cameras. A development announcement. It's kind of a weird term. Sorry if you think like itchy nose. Stop itchy. Like bugs crawling up my nose. Panasonic announced a development announcement of the GH6. Hallelujah. Everybody's waiting for this for a long time. So the GH6 is coming. If you haven't seen my video on it, it's very short. It's 2 minutes and 15 seconds long. There's really only 3 key things that were talked about in there. Only 3 things that were really announced, but they're kind of important. So I'm going to pull up my notes here just to make sure I don't get anything wrong, because I would not want to repeat myself incorrectly. But let's just talk about that first, what's in there. So really, it's an announcement of 3 things. First of all, it's a development announcement, which means the camera is currently in development. The camera will be released sometime by the end of this year. No actual date, just by the end of this year, within 2021. So, you know, it could be next week. It could be December 31st. Both qualify. A whole new, sensor architecture that says something about that. Obviously, this is a much newer camera than everything else that's out there. So clearly, it's going to have a whole lot of good guts on the inside. They didn't really give any specifics of that. But here are the 3 things that they did say specifically. Number 1, find the right thing. There we go. Well, the new sensor, new engine. That's kind of the overarching thing. But number 1, 10-bit 4K, 120 frame per second. High frame rate video, HFR or VFR, and I'll explain the difference there in a second. But 4K 120p, this is a big deal. And I know that Panasonic's not going to be the first to have this. There are other cameras that have that out there now, but that is a very, very welcome addition to the camera. So 4K 120 frame per second. Now, HFR versus VFR, variable frame rate versus high frame rate. Variable frame rate is the mode that you're most likely used to if you're shooting with a Lumix camera, where let's say you decide to shoot at I'm going to make up a number, 90 frames per second. When you play it back, it plays back at 30 frames or 24 frames or whatever format you're shooting in. So you see it play back in camera in slow motion. But what you don't get with that is audio. It does not record audio with that. So some of the newer cameras, including now, of course, the GH6, is going to have and does have what they call high frame rate, which is shooting just like normal video, like normal 30 frame or 24 frame per second video. When you play it back on the back of the camera, you see the video playing in real time, you get audio, but it has 120 up to 120 frames per second, which means that to do the slowdown, you do that on the timeline in your NLE as opposed to having it done in camera. Advantages and disadvantages both ways. And I think it's great that both are in there because quite often for me, if I'm shooting slow motion, it's very deliberate. It's a specific thing. I don't care about the audio. I'm trying to do something in slow motion, and I want to be able to see that playback immediately in the camera without having to pull out the card, put it in the computer, see if it worked or not. So I love that, but I totally get that for a lot of people, you want to have the high frame rate where you can slow it down later, but still maintain the audio. Awesome. So both features are there. Number 2, 422 10-bit DCI 4K 60p with unlimited recording time. This is significant for a couple of reasons. If you look at the most powerful Micro Four Thirds cameras that we have today, then you can get 4K 60 but in 420, or you can get 4K 30 in 422. But now we're getting 4K 60 422 and all the way up to DCI, which is actually it's the true 4K, 4096 pixels wide. DCI is also called Cinema 4K, or C4K is what you often see on the camera itself. But just so you get that, and that's a 17:9 aspect ratio, so slightly wider than your standard 16:9. And then 5.7K internal, 5.7K 10-bit video internally on the GH6. Kind of cool. So those are the that's it. That's all that was announced. Like that's it. There's a new lens coming. So this is the 10-25 lens. You guys might have seen this one before. Beautiful lens. It's big. It's 10-25 f1.7, clickless aperture, mechanical clutch for the focus. Oh, it's a beautiful lens. It's big, but it's a beautiful lens. And now there is a 25-50, so that is a 50 to 100 millimeter equivalent that is in development right now. So that was announced as well. I don't know if they announced a release date for that. Actually, I don't think they did. Could be wrong. But anyway, so that's coming too. So that's the GH6. We'll talk about the GH5 in a moment. Let me just go into the comments real quick here and see what else is happening. Let's get the chit chat back up. James saw the piece on the GH5 Mark II earlier. Thank you very much. I'm curious what I was using for the countdown timer. So the whole chat overlay and all this stuff is piping into a software system called Mimo Live. It's totally overkill for what I'm doing here, but that's kind of what I do here. It's kind of how I roll. It's totally overkill. Mimo Live is an app that does, Mimo stands for multiple in, multiple out, and you can do a ton of things in there and then output them a ton of different ways. And what I'm doing, and this is how you're seeing this chat here as well, is I'm outputting through a Blackmagic Ultra Studio 4K, which has dual SDI out, so I can feed video and an alpha, and then in my ATEM, it's merging those together to give us the transparency. So that's where all the transparent graphics are coming through. It's a software system outputting through hardware. Like I said, it's a bit overkill, but there you go. All right, scrolling down to the chat. Let's see here. Matthew drives buses, so gets to see many different places. Fantastic. Planning to create a YouTube channel to showcase the different places you travel. Awesome. Love that. Always room for that. Jake. Well, good to see you, Jake. Haven't seen you in ages, my friend. Kit stalled. Okay, everything's okay now. Okay, good. I hope we're okay now. My goodness. I thought it was Mimo Live. Gotta love the Mimo. Mimo is awesome. That is the truth. Okay, so that's GH6. GH5 Mark II, of course, is a full announcement of all the features. Where I did a video not only talking about the specs, but also showing the camera because I got one. And yeah, it's a nice upgrade. This is, it's not the GH6. I know a lot of people were hoping the GH6 was going to be what was shipping right now. It is not, but it is a nice upgrade. Now, I know that for a lot of people, it's going to be a question of, do I need to upgrade? Should I buy this or wait for the GH6? I think that's going to be a common question. I think, obviously it just comes down to what your own needs are as a filmmaker, content creator, whatever. The specs that are in the video, I think that makes it really clear what the differences are. And I'm going to pull them up on my screen just so I can kind of look through them again real quick. And if there's any specific thing that you guys want to talk about, then by all means, let's do it. But I'm just going to recap them really quickly here. If there's anything that jumps out at you, you're like, oh, tell me more about that, I can. But again, I did just do a big long video about it, so I want to make this more a Q&A kind of a thing. Anything that you do want to talk about. But let me just run through the overview really quick. So same sensor, but it has a new anti-reflective coating on it. There is a whole new engine behind the sensors, the engine that is driving the G9 and the BGH1. So it is more advanced, which gives it more capabilities, such as the ability to now shoot 25p and 2997 in Cinema 4K 422 10-bit. So that was, remember when I mentioned the GH6, it will be able to do 4K 60 at 422 10-bit, whereas this camera maxes out at 30. There is also, in 420 10-bit, the GH5 Mark II will do up to 60p. So again, just like I said in the beginning with the GH6, you've got, you can go a little bit this way, or you can go a little bit this way today, but with the GH6, you'll get them both up to here. You got to, give up a little bit of something on the current lineup, but the GH6 gives you everything of everything. Anamorphic mode, new anamorphic frame rate of 50p if you're shooting 4K anamorphic. Variable frame rate in the GH5 Mark II. You now can do 2 to 60 frames per second in cinema 4K and 2 to 50 frames per second in 4K anamorphic. Neither of those were available at all in the GH5, so that's nice. This is something that I'd be really curious to know how many people use this and in what workflow. But the GH5, I mean, really all the Lumix cameras, can output 422 10-bit video over the HDMI port. In most of the shooting modes, you can record internally in whatever format you choose internally while simultaneously outputting 422 10-bit over HDMI, which is awesome. Now, with the GH5 Mark II, you can do that all the way up to Cinema 4K 60p, which is huge. But I'm curious how people actually use that. If you use that simultaneously recording internally and externally, I'd love to know. I wonder if it's a case of people that are recording both formats, actually recording both, or if it's more about simply monitoring externally in full 4K while shooting internally. I'm very curious how people are using that. So I'd love to hear your thoughts on that. All right, next is the new looks, the film modes that are in there. It looks like, oh no, I did fix that for the video. You have the new versions of Cinelike D and Cinelike V, so they bring them up to par with what's in the S5 and the S1H, and I guess the BGH1, probably the GH5S as well. Anyway, now you have these similar looks. They're kind of a newer, updated look for that, as well as two other looks, the classic Neo and a monochrome look. They're just kind of cool, nice looks that are built into the camera. So if you're not into color grading, you just want to shoot it straight in camera, get your looking camera. Couple more options there. Vlog L, that's a big deal. Vlog is now included in the camera, no longer requires an update. The USB 3 port's a big deal. USB 3.1 update is now what's called a PD port, power delivery port. That means that you can not only charge the camera over USB, but you can power it over USB. So if you have a battery pack that is sufficiently powered battery pack, plug that into your GH5 Mark II, and you can power the camera essentially indefinitely. Pretty cool. Love that. Then there's the whole wireless thing, which is really interesting. So the GH5 Mark II can live stream to YouTube, Facebook, whatever, directly from the camera using just your app an app on your phone to control it. And that's the way it is out of the box when it ships. Then in a firmware update to come down the road, you will get wired shooting. And I'm not quite sure how that's going to work because it's not USB. There's something else that I'm not totally understanding or not totally clued up on how that's going to work. But there's going to be a wired option, as well as the ability to do RTSP streaming directly from the camera. If you're not sure why you would want that, this is something where if you're on a local network, on a LAN, and you want to stream from your camera to somewhere else on the local network. Now, if you're just in a small studio, it doesn't seem like a big deal, but if you're in a big environment, big corporate environment, you can take one camera and stream to a location anywhere on campus, meaning that you could have cameras scattered all over the place that are IP streaming directly to a switcher, pulling in the IP streams and switching from them. Basically, think of it like a really, 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 really long SDI cable. That's kind of how I always think about it. It makes a lot of sense that way. One more quick page of things to talk about. Autofocus has improved. It is now the same engine that is in the G9, the GH5, the BGH1, the S5, and so on. It is a better autofocus than what we've had in the past. It's good. It's still not it's not a Sony. What are you gonna do? But it's still it is definitely a lot better than the old GH5. And they added head, body, and animal recognition to the autofocus system. The viewfinder, the electronic viewfinder, is now at 120 hertz, higher refresh rate, so things just look a little bit smoother. The resolution of the LCD panel in the back is a little bit higher. Curiously, it's ever so slightly smaller. It's a 3.0 inches versus 3.2. When I read that, I didn't believe it because I've been looking at both and I'm like, I couldn't tell the difference. I had to get a ruler out and measure. I'm like, oh, it is ever so slightly smaller, but it's a tiny bit. I don't think you're going to notice. And the new battery. So the battery is kind of interesting. Somebody asked about this in the comments already too, or maybe that was on my on the YouTube video. But this is the new battery. So if you haven't seen this yet, let me get this up. You can see here, if I get it just right, you can see there's a slightly different shape to it. So this is the new battery that is in the 5D, what do you call it? GH5 Mark II, as well as what's in the S5. What's cool about this battery, so this is a higher capacity battery. It's 2200 milliamps as opposed to 1860. What's cool about this is the battery slot will actually take the original GH5 batteries. So any batteries that you have for your GH5, and those batteries were the same as the GH4, and I think even the GH3, I think it's same battery. I think so. This battery's been around for a long time. All those batteries still work in the GH5 Mark II, but if you're buying new batteries, then you can get the newer, higher capacity ones, which is great. That's basically it. That's the overview of everything. And again, I went into a lot more detail in my video, so I do encourage you to watch that. Let me pull up the chat again. I left the chat on this whole time, and let's just keep scrolling through. Alrighty, Carl, is the GH6 still micro four thirds? Absolutely. Yeah, of course. The GH series is the micro four thirds series. The S series is the full frame. So you have your S5, S1H. Those are full frame. The GH6 is micro four thirds. All right. Okay now. Oh, good. Tom, GH6 sounds exceptional. I know for a fact that they use GH5 for some shoots in the Norwegian The Quake movie. I haven't seen that. In tight places like elevators, etc. Nice. That's cool. It's always awesome to hear about these cameras getting used in locations like that. I think we're going to see the BGH1 get used in a lot of stuff like that. And actually, you might not know this, but the BGH1, I don't know if it's officially approved, but it meets the requirements for Netflix shooting. Netflix has very, very strict requirements of what cameras are used and their capabilities. The BGH1 matches all that, which is, I just don't know if it's actually on the official list. The S1H is. That was a big deal because it was the first mirrorless camera on there. I don't know if the BGH1 is on the list or not, but anyway, it qualifies. Kind of neat. How does it compare to the BGH1 versus the GH5 II? Okay, so Jason, I encourage you to watch the video that I released earlier today. Even though I don't talk about the comparison, the chart that's on camera, on screen the whole time, shows the BGH1 versus the GH5S versus the GH5 Mark II versus the GH5 original. So you'll see all four of those side by side for every line item. So you can just open up, what you can do is just kind of scrub to, the way I did the video is I kind of revealed each line at a time, scrub to the end of, page 1 of that and just pause that, do a screen grab if you want to, and then you can compare everything at your leisure. But yeah, it's great. I mean, the BGH1 is still a remarkable camera. That's what I'm on right now. I absolutely love this thing. The GH5S, has the dual native ISO. Actually, so does the BGH1. There's a lot of differences still between them, and it's worth looking at the chart to determine which camera is right for you. I was hoping the GH6 would have a 6K sensor with dual native ISO. 5.7 doesn't quite meet that spec. Right, 5.7 is not quite 6K. I think some of it has to do with aspect ratio and then physical limitations of a sensor. There's only so many pixels you can pack in there before things get silly. And given that it is the greatest and latest capabilities, I'm going to assume that there's just a limit that they've hit in there. But yeah, there you go. It does not say, we haven't seen anything about dual native ISO. I don't know. I hope it does. Let me put it that way. I hope it does. And I think that would make sense because we have dual native ISO in a couple other sensors already. So hopefully we'll have that. It'd be cool. Have I done a video on Mimo Live? I haven't. Probably should do that one of these days. Press the button like everyone. Yeah, everyone press the button. I don't know what he's talking about, but cool. Yeah, press the button. Never used that. I don't know where we are. I'm all over the place. Jake says, Photo Joseph, is there any difference in the zoom punch inability while recording in the GH5? Okay, well, GH6, we don't know anything more than the few things that I mentioned in the beginning. But zoom punch, so, okay, I think you're talking about punching into the sensor while shooting, perhaps. So on all the Micro Four Thirds cameras, you have the ability to shoot full sensor or to shoot 1-to-1 pixel. So it's effectively pushing into the sensor, but never scaling up. It's never scaling up. It's kind of cropping in to a 1-to-1 maximum. Now, the higher resolution that you shoot, the less that crop would be, right? So if you're shooting HD only, if this is the size of your sensor and you're shooting HD, then your 1-to-1 crop could be this. So you've effectively zoomed in a whole lot. Whereas if you're shooting 4K, the full crop might only be this much. And of course, if you're 5.7K, then that is most likely using every last pixel on there, so there isn't going to be any crop. The full frame cameras have an extra stage. They have their full, and then they have APS-C crop, and then they have a 1-to-1 pixel crop as well. But obviously, it's a bigger sensor, so you've got more flexibility with that. If that's not what you meant on there, Jake, please do reiterate your question, and I will try to answer it. People tell me I had the lower third on for that whole time. It was an ad from Mimo. There you go. Shedhart says, quite disappointed the GH5 didn't receive a firmware to improve the autofocus. This is what this camera needs. So, Shed, I don't know how long you've had your GH5, but the GH5 has been around since 2017, and it has received many, many firmware updates almost every single one of which improved the autofocus incrementally as they went. There are physical limitations. There are things that just only so far you can push any processor, and the processor in the GH5 has kind of hit a wall. There's just not a whole lot more. I'm not saying there's never going to be an update to the GH5 again. There might be, but I wouldn't count on a whole lot more happening. You need power, you need flexibility to be able to improve things. That camera has been dramatically improved since it was first released. Every single one of those updates was free, by the way. I'd like to point out and I always like to remind people of that. All of these firmware updates have been free. The only thing you might have paid for would be the vlog update for the camera, but that was, from the beginning known. If you want vlog, you had to buy it. The GH5 Mark II, by the way, includes vlog. So the GH5 Mark II has the new the new Venus engine, which has a lot more power, a lot more flexibility, and a lot more ability to grow into the future. So I would expect a nice long life out of the GH5 Mark II, just like the GH5 had, with lots of upgrades to come. What bitrate am I streaming at right now? The stream looks very good. I am currently streaming at 12.3 megabit. That's what I'm using the what do you call it? Here, I can show you actually. There we go. There's my stream. That's what I'm streaming at right now. I'm using the Blackmagic web presenter, and I am streaming at 12 plus megabit with 3% cache. This is beautiful. It's a perfect stream right now. Nice. Always like that. All right, let's turn this back off. That's the wrong button. And there we go. Assume the new batteries won't fit in the GH5, GH5S. Correct. So the new battery has a little, I don't know how close this lens will focus. Let me see if I can get this in here to view. You can see there's like a little lip here, that little ridge. That little ridge makes it a slightly different shape, and so that it can't fit into the older cameras. So yeah, but the older batteries fit into the newer camera. So physically, largely the same shape and size. It is the same shape and size. It's just got that little extra ridge so that you can't, obviously, because the camera wouldn't know what to do with it. How is the low light in these new cameras? Well, the GH5 Mark II is a single base ISO sensor, so its low light capability is going to be close to, I would say if you've played with the G9, it's going to be equivalent to the G9. So it's better than the GH5 Mark I because it does have, again, the new processing engine in it to help reduce noise and all that good stuff. It's not going to be as good as, say, the GH5S, which has dual native ISO, where you can shoot natively at, 4,000 ISO, and that's as good as 400. I don't remember if those numbers are exactly right, but dual native ISO is where you get that really high-end, low-light performance. The GH5 Mark II does not have that. It is a single base ISO sensor. As far as I know, BGH1 is on the official Netflix list. Good. That's awesome. Jake says, I was referring to the focus punch-in that you can't do while recording currently. Oh, okay. So, I don't know. So when you're, I could find, you're asking about obviously on the GH6, I have no idea. On the, let's see here. I wonder if I can do this. So I'm looking at the camera now. Let's see here. If I don't have a card in here. I don't know. Jake, do me a favor. Hit me up later. Let me look at that later. I don't want to fumble around for 10 minutes trying to turn it all on because you have to turn on the focus punch-in, and I don't think that's on right now. I do know, because I did see it when I was scrolling through the settings, that you can disable the focus punch-in on the HDMI output, which is critical because the last thing you would want is for the sensor to punch in while outputting and recording over the HDMI out. So that tells you that you can punch in while recording externally. But if you can punch in while shooting internally, I don't know. Ask me offline on that. I'm going to have to dig into that and figure that one out. Is the Venus engine in the GH5 Mark II the same as the BGH1? That is not clear. It is probably the same hardware, maybe with slightly different. I don't know. It's the modern sensor. It's a more modern sensor, it's a newer sensor. I keep saying sensor, but I mean engine. Newer engine than what's in the GH5. There's no, as far as I've seen, there's not something that says it is exactly the same one. So I don't have a good answer for you there. Sorry. Shed says the idea is that G9 have already a better autofocus as GH5. Correct. And still receiving a new firmware update for autofocus improvement. It's quite not fair. I know GH5 had the G9 is a significantly newer camera than the GH5. That's what you are not understanding, my friend. The G9 is significantly newer and has a newer engine than the GH5. So that's why it is continuing to get updates in autofocus. Okay, cool. We just ran through all those questions there, which now that time I didn't have the question. I am just botching the whole Q&A thing today, aren't I? Well, there we go. Anyway, I read the questions. You heard them all. Okay, let's see here. Where are we? Wow, the YouTube is just freaking out on the view count. It cannot keep track of what's happening here. Quick reminder, it looks like there are a few of you over there watching on the original channel. There is a link in the description so you can get rid of that big old thing over my face and you can participate in the chat. Scroll down, there's a link. Come over to the new channel. If you're watching on the new channel, photojoseph.com, youtube.com/photojoseph be sure to subscribe to this channel, please. This is the new channel. I got to build this thing up so that people find out about these live shows and I can stop simulcasting it just to get the word out there that I am live. Okay, let's see here. Anything else? Oh, let's talk about the other firmware updates because someone asked that earlier and I kind of blew past that, said we'd come back to it. Let me pull up my notes. So there were additional firmware updates that are announced. So the GH5S is getting a new firmware update, which is going to give it raw output over HDMI. Kind of a big deal. So that's really cool. I actually just saw the press release this morning as well from Atomos announcing their support of the Ninja 5 for that. Obviously, these things go hand in hand. So the Ninja 5 is required to record ProRes RAW off of the HDMI port in the with the GH5S with this new firmware update. So that's super cool. Raw video out over HDMI. Love that. Improved autofocus in the GH5S. So again, to Shed's question earlier, it's because it has the newer Venus engine than the original GH5 does. There are still autofocus improvements possible with this newer engine. Pardon me. GH5S is getting the red record frame indicator. Thank God. Love that feature. The vertical orientation tag in the video, that's in the GH5S. That's video guidelines. Okay, so that's something else that I showed in the GH5 Mark II video. So that the guidelines where you can say, show me what a 2:3:5:1 crop looks like or a 9:16 crop would look like. And you see that guide in the camera while you're shooting. I think that's fantastic. That's really, really useful. That is being added to the GH5S as well. G9 also is getting a firmware update, again, also with improved autofocus performance. Also the red frame indicator, also the vertical orientation, also the frame marker. There's a power saving mode that's on both cameras as well. Great. So a lot of the same things across the G100, which I've never actually used. Also has them. Let's see. Users can choose to add the vertical orientation information again. Okay, that's basically it. And the power supply. The camera can be recognized when it's connected to the PC via the USB power supply port. I guess that means you just mount it as a. I'm not sure what that means. Anyway, okay. So those are the other updates that were announced as well. So some firmware updates for the existing cameras. The GH5S obviously being the most prominent one with that raw output. So that is now 2 of the Micro Four Thirds cameras that do raw output over the HDMI, the BGH1 and the GH5S. Superb. Really, really cool stuff. Dig in that. Okay, let's see here. Any other questions? No other questions popping up right now, except that now there is one. So let's see here. Let's see if I can get this right this time. Let's pull this up. Maddie says, any news about the red frame indicator on the old-fashioned GH5? I have not seen that, and it doesn't seem like it would be something that requires the extra processing engine, but then again, it does because it's adding more information to the screen while recording, which is obviously when things are taxed the most. Maybe it can't be done. I mean, the fact that it's being added to now every other camera except that one does make me feel like maybe it just can't be done. Maybe there's an update coming in the future. I don't know. I certainly would like to see that. I think that red frame indicator is the bomb. It is huge. It is wonderful. Every camera ever made should have it. But sorry, I don't have any other news for you other than that. Ivan, welcome. I'm glad that I joined you super late. Raw output from GH5S. That's right. Raw output GH5S into a Ninja 5 to record into ProRes RAW. Tom says, how good is the new autofocus? Will it follow you if you jump around? Just finally tested the Canon R5 myself and I wasn't able to lose the iFocus. Okay, so the Canon's autofocus is like kind of awesome. It's not going to be that good. It's not. We'll just straight up say it. So this camera right now is the BGH1. This has the latest autofocus engine. So if it is currently set, let me clear the screen of other stuff. Let's get rid of all this. Okay. So it is currently set to face detection. So as I move in, I'm going to look over to see. I mean, that's right. It's actually really good. Wow. I mean, that is not too shabby at all. This is obviously an optimal lighting situation. Also, the dark background helps to separate me from the background, but that's pretty good. I mean, wow. Okay, I'm actually pretty impressed. The lens that's in here, the lens that's in here is the 12 to 35 f2.8, the original one. I don't think the difference in the lens would make any difference to the autofocus, but that's the lens that's in there now. So it's on face detection, and that's what you're seeing right now. If I hold up an object, so because it's on face detection, if I hold up this object and I don't cover my face, it is not going to focus on it because it's locked onto my eye. As soon as I move this in front of my face and block it, then it will focus to that. And it is a nice, smooth pull of focus. So this is the BGH1, which is the same as the S5 and the same and should be the same in the GH5 Mark II. So that's not too shabby. Now, are we talking like running? So let's see, if I go all the way back here, I can't tell. You guys are going to have to tell me if it's in focus, if you can even tell. I can't see because my screen is too small, so I don't know if it is. But if I come up, I mean, that's pretty dang good. I'm actually kind of impressed. Okay, all right, enough screwing around. What do you think? I think that Tom says that is good enough for any normal situation. Well, there you go. It's pretty good. That is pretty good. Okay, that was fun. Woohoo. Focus on. Maddie says focus on. Ellen says that smooth focus transition is one of the major reasons I prefer Lumix cameras over the competition. That's very nice of you to say. It is a very nice smooth transition. I think a lot of cameras do pop really quickly, which may not feel natural. I think this is a very natural one. The problem, of course, is that it doesn't always get it. Sometimes it misses focus, and then you're like, well, what good is it? So, I'm not going to pretend that it's better than it is, but I think that test just showed you that, granted, this is a controlled and very nicely lit situation that worked out pretty darn well. That's kind of hard to argue. So let's see the hand up there. I also have an additional light up here to illuminate whatever I hold up so that I can do things like hold stuff up and you can actually see it. That's a little light that I've added on there. But that's pretty smooth. I mean, that's pretty good. I ain't gonna lie. That is pretty good. Maddie says it's very good. Why, thank you. Okay. Anything else? Even impressive. Maybe this was asked, but anything mentioned about GH5S getting autofocus upgrade? Yeah, no, it is. So the GH5S got, let me just read through this real quick. I can't put this on screen because I don't have the official press release. I have an early version of it. And so I can't show this one, although it's probably identical, but sorry. But GH5S, number one feature, improved autofocus performance. Let me just read it to you. Improved autofocus performance. It can detect the eyes/face at 2 times faster recognition cycle speed and human animal at 5 times faster recognition cycle speed. These subjects can be detected even when they appear approximately half the size. Oh, right, so farther away from the subject or wider angle lens. Nice. And this is a comparison before and after the firmware update. Tracking and recognition performance of autofocus have been improved with an addition of head recognition. So the head recognition, this is a big deal that's in all part of this new engines, and again, cannot be done on the GH5 original because it just doesn't have the power. So right now it's on face detection, which is face/eye/head/body/animal. And the animal one you can turn on and off. The idea is that even as you turn your face away, that the camera still recognizes that is a human head and follows that. That's the intention. Obviously, the eye is the kind of the best thing to track. Face is very recognizable, but head detection is part of it as well, which is a really big deal. Okay, let's see. Okay, so that was feature number 1 on the GH5S. This is firmware version 2.0, by the way, so it is a big version update, if you will. So the big autofocus improvement, raw video output over HDMI. That is the big hallmark feature of the GH5S, now getting the raw HDMI output. I don't know about you guys. The GH5S is for shooting out in the field is probably my favorite Micro Four Thirds camera because of the dual native ISO. Granted, it doesn't have stabilization. However, if I'm doing any big handheld stuff, I'm probably more likely to shoot on a gimbal, in which case I don't care about the IS in the camera. I really like the GH5S a lot. Now, my favorite right now is this BGH1 because I can control it over a computer and it's just freaking cool. And I want every camera ever made to have an Ethernet port now. But other than that, the BGH1 is awesome. The GH5S is awesome. Yeah, and the dual native ISO for me personally is a really big deal. I like having that native ISO, native higher ISO for lower light situations. Anyway, number 3 in the GH5S was the functions we talked about: red record frame indicator, the what do you call it? The frame, the outline frame showing you the different aspect ratios they can shoot at and so on. So a few other little things. But yeah, big autofocus improvements in the GH5S. Jake says, do you have the spot meter features in video like the S1H and the GH5 II? You do. You do. You absolutely do in the GH5 Mark II. It's called the luminance spot meter. Now, for anybody who is not familiar with the luminance spot meter, it is effectively a spot meter, just like, your camera's got a spot meter, right? You meter it from here. But it shows on screen the luminance values, primarily meant for shooting in log, when you can set a luminance of 0 as your baseline. So you know that 18% gray, your gray card, that's where you set it to 0. And you get your exposure perfect based off of that. Now you combine that with zebra striping and you have an immense amount of flexibility in how you do your exposures on the fly or in a studio environment, whatever, with those two features. I did a whole video on that. It is actually part of the Lumix S5 video series that I did for Panasonic, but that one particular video, because it was my personal favorite, is on my own channel. And I've linked to that. It's not linked in this video, but in the video of the GH5 Mark II, it is linked there somewhere. It's linked in there, or just scroll through my channel, you'll find it. But yeah, that's huge. So yes, Jake, that is in there. Ivan is impressed. Excellent. Always like them being impressed. I don't need an Ethernet port, just need my $1,500 cameras to talk USB video class that is be recognized as a webcam by nearly every OS under the sun. So the GH5 Mark II does this, the BGH1 does this. Does the G9? I don't remember which other cameras are supported, but there is a USB driver, and you do have to install the driver on Mac or PC to make your Lumix camera become a webcam. I think what you're saying is you just want it to be USB camera class. You just plug it in and it just shows up that way. Yeah, fair point. I wonder what that would take, actually. I have no idea. I don't know. But that would be cool if they just did it. You didn't have to have any other driver. That would be nice. There must be a reason that it doesn't work that way. But I like your thinking. Darren says, excluding HDMI Ninja output are the other mentioned items for the GH5S firmware update applicable to the G9. So the G9 has all the same software autofocus improvements. So I'm looking at the press release again. It's a copy and paste from the GH5S and G9. So all the same things I talked about there are included there. So basically the G9, from what I can see here, is getting everything that the GH5S is getting minus raw output. Oh, yeah, that's pretty awesome. How do you feel, Alan says, how do you feel about the 5.9K at 60 versus 8K in the GH6 specs? In my opinion, more useful, but it will hurt them not having 8K. So, okay, so let's address 8K to start with. I don't think, and I could be wrong, I'm certainly not an engineer, but I do not think that it is technically possible to get 8K video off of a Micro Four Thirds sensor. I think that there are limits of physics there, or maybe if it was possible that it would just be really low quality, but I think that this is just not going to happen. There is a full frame lineup of cameras, and so I think that there would be more likely that we would see 8K on a future full frame Lumix camera than we would off of a Micro Four Thirds camera. I think this 5.7K is probably approaching the maximum of what can be done on that MFT sensor. Again, not an engineer. I'm speaking largely speculatively here, but I'm pretty sure that that's kind of where we're hitting right there. The G9 can be used as webcam. Good, thank you. Panasonic has beta software for making Lumix cameras webcam. Yep. And it works. It works fine. But you do have to have the driver. And I think what whoever was just asking about it was inferring was just have it just work without a driver, which would be pretty cool. The Lumix Tether app is a slightly non-standard solution, no-go on Linux, Chromebook, or Android devices. Yeah, no, I totally get it. I get you. I get it. It would be cool. It would be cool. That would be nice. But it isn't. Okay. Whew. Man, I am chattering away here. All right, let's see here. Anything else that we have not discussed? We talked about we didn't talk much about the lens because there isn't much information, but that 25 to 50 mil f1.7 it looks virtually identical to this. That's going to be a nice lens. This is a big lens. You know, if you've never held this lens, it is surprisingly light, but it is big. It's a big lens, but it's f1.7. Yeah, the light's got to come from somewhere. It's very nice though. It's a very nice lens. I do like it. I like it a lot. I'm still so impressed at how well this autofocus is doing on here. I'm like, that was cool. That was a good demo. Actually, like, really worked. So often you do a demo, you're like, let me show you something that works every time, and then it completely fails. This time I went, I have no idea what's going to happen, and it really worked. I'm like, I'm quite happy. By the way, I'm operating on 3 hours of sleep, so if any of this sounds loopy, that's why. That is my excuse. Anything else? Yes, we didn't talk about this. Someone is asking, why isn't it showing up in this chat? Oh, there it is. Matthias saying, how about the linear focus option? There we go. On the Lumix lenses. Okay, this is another really cool thing that is part of the 5D Mark II. So on the, I guess the S5 and the S1H, maybe the S1 as well. I don't remember exactly which models, but many of the S, if not all of the S series cameras, have the ability for some lenses, it doesn't work on all lenses, but for some lenses to enable a linear focus mode. So just to kind of understand what this means, forget about the fact that this has a clutched lens. Just forget about that for a moment. What this, right now I'm spinning the focus ring and it just spins forever, right? This is called focus by wire. And the action of spinning this has absolutely zero mechanical connection to the focus mechanism itself, right? There's no physical connection, it's electronic. And so what that means is the way that focus by wire works natively is if you rotate slowly, it does a very slow, gradual focus change. And if you kind of crank it fast, it accelerates and it goes really fast. So you can get like from near to far very quickly by moving it very fast, or you can get near to far very slowly by turning it slowly and then turning it around and around and around. That's focus by wire, which is actually really great for a lot of focusing situations, but especially if you're manually focusing video, it's not so great because it's very hard to control hitting a focus point. If you want to hit a mark, you want to focus from A to B, very, very hard to do with a focus by wire. So many of the cameras, including now the GH5 Mark II, have a linear focus option, which means that the focusing movement is linear in the sense that it is not, there's no acceleration curve to it. So if this is close and this is far, it doesn't matter if I move it slowly or I move it fast, it's still close to far. But because it's all electronically controlled, what you can also do is you can set in the camera how much of a rotation you have to do. And what the options are will depend on each lens. But as an example, you could have a lens where you rotate just a 90 degrees. So like this is the closest focusing distance, rotate just 90 degrees and you get to the farthest. But then in software, you can say, no, give me a full 360 rotation. So you have to rotate all the way around 360 degrees to get a full front to far. That is fantastic. Super, super great. Now, that functionality is in the 5D Mark II. Is it the first micro? It must be the first Micro Four Thirds camera to have that. Ooh, that I'd have to check. I mean, of the Lumix cameras, I'd have to check. But anyway, while that feature is in the camera at shipping, the lenses will require a firmware update. And I believe that it said, I think I saw June. Don't quote me on that. I think I saw June as the release date for the firmware updates for the lenses, which is, I mean, that's next month. Jesus, it's next month. It's almost June. So probably by the time you get your hands on a 5D Mark II, you'll have those updates available as well. I think that's probably a pretty safe assumption. But that's what the linear focus thing is. It's fantastic. It's really, really good. Okay. I've got the 10 to 25 in Gen, not taking it off the camera since. Fair. It's a great lens. It really is a great lens. Matthias says, better having more dynamic range than super resolution, in my humble opinion. I could not agree more. I don't need to output more than 4K. I love having more resolution so I can do a punch in or a reframe without having to scale up. I often end up doing like a 5% or like 105% punch in on a 4K shot, and that I'm comfortable with. In an extreme, like I might push to 110%. I really don't like to. I really definitely don't want to go above that. So if you need to reframe or you just want to punch in or you want just a, as an effect or whatever, having that extra resolution is certainly welcome. So that's the only time I ever shoot 6K is when I know that I want the flexibility to punch in, but I don't ever deliver in 6K. And this is me. This is, the work that I do. I don't ever deliver in 6K. I said 5D twice. I got 3 hours of sleep last night. All right. And the only other Mark II camera that I have ever used for an extended period of time was the Canon 5D Mark II. So whenever I think Mark II, the 5D wants to precede those words. So anytime that I've said 5D Mark II, I obviously mean the GH5 Mark II. It's just 3 hours of sleep. Just forgive me. And I need more coffee. Can you use the GH5 Mark II as a wireless camera with an A10 Mini Pro? And if so, what's the latency? Okay. No, not without additional hardware at least. Right. Okay. So the wireless capability of the GH5 Mark II is specifically for streaming from the camera directly to YouTube or whatever via your phone. That's the only way that it works as it ships. There is a firmware update that will come later this year for the 5D Mark II. Did I just say 5D? I did again, didn't I? Jesus. For the GH5 Mark II. That will give you two things. It'll give you wired streaming, which is going to require some kind of an Ethernet connection. I have no idea how that's going to work. It's probably going to be a USB to Ethernet adapter. I don't know if Panasonic's making one. I don't know if it's just going to be a generic thing, but if it's wired, then it has to be Ethernet. So that's, I think, a safe assumption. It's going to be some kind of USB-C to Ethernet adapter. Anyway, so you'll get wired streaming. So the exact same thing that you have today with the wireless, but it'll be wired, which is better because you get more reliability. That's just what that comes down to. Plus, you'll get RTSP streaming. RTP and RTSP streaming is designed for local streaming over a LAN, over a local network. What that means is that I can, in my camera, and I've done this with the BGH1 because this is in the BGH1, there's a video on it that's not yet released, but coming very soon as they go through a final round of approvals. There's, a dozen videos that I've now done for Panasonic on the BGH1. One of them is all about this RTSP streaming. So the way this works is in the camera, you basically just turn it on. Let me think through the process, right? Right, you turn it on, you get the IP address of the camera. Obviously, it's connected to the network. You go to any RTSP receiving tool, and that could be software or hardware, and you punch in the address for the camera. And the camera just goes, bing, I'm online, and you get a little blue box that shows that you're streaming, and it is streaming a point-to-point from the camera to that receiver somewhere else on your local network. I'm sure you can do it over the internet as well, but this is designed to be a local network thing. And you can do it at really high resolution and bitrate. You can do the full 4K. I don't remember the bit rates now available on the BGH1, but it's high. Like you can do a really, really high quality stream because you're not dealing with internet bandwidth. It's just your local bandwidth. And this effectively gives you a point-to-point stream anywhere on your local network. So as I was saying earlier, if you're just in a small studio environment, this is not massively useful. I mean, it certainly could still be if you wanted to put the camera like up in a ceiling somewhere and just run an IP feed down into a switching system. But it means that you could, let's say, you got a big corporate campus and you're doing like an all hands meeting, and you have all hands meetings in 20 offices around the campus, and you want people to be able to, from conference room B to be able to pull up a camera and, say hi and ask their question, whatever. You could have an IP camera in each room that is feeding into a central switching system. Now, the ATEM does not have the ability to receive an RTMP signal into it natively. The Epiphan Pearl, I believe, can receive an RTSP signal natively. I know it receives an SRT, so it probably does. So that would allow it to receive it directly. So that's the kind of solution that you'd be looking at there. But you could also get external hardware that is an RTSP receiver with an HDMI or an SDI out. So a lot of different options. It's just one of these things where you have this flexible tool that can be used in any number of ways. Long-winded answer to your question, but there you go. Okay. Excuse me. All right. Sorry if you answered this already. Will the linear focus come to the GH5S and BGH1? I haven't seen anything about that. I don't know why it wouldn't, but I haven't seen anything about it. So I don't know if this is something that's only possible in the GH5 Mark II. I don't know. Sorry, I don't know. Randy says, how will the GH5 Mark II compare to the S5? Very different comparisons because one's full frame, one's micro four thirds. So if you want to do your own comparison on that, you can pull up the charts for both and just do a side by side, but that's not a comparison that you're going to very often see because they're just radically different cameras. Get some sleep after this. You've earned it. Thank you. Panasonic WX970 camcorder wasn't very useful back when it supported streaming to Ustream and effectively nothing else. If it went to YouTube, I don't know what I'd do with it. RTSP though, love. Yeah, RTSP is very, very useful. What about autofocus and adapted lenses with the Mark II? I think that you can expect the same kind of performance you get now. It's not as good as native lenses, but it still works. I'm not sure what else to tell you there. I certainly haven't done any kind of testing. So you could stream to OBS and then into the A10 Mini Pro. So if you streamed into OBS and then you did a video out from your computer into the A10, sure, that would work. Yeah, that would work. I think there's probably better ways to do it, but yeah, I mean, that should work. If OBS has RTSP receiving, which I know it does, when I did the video on the BGH1, we used vMix, right? And vMix has a open RTSP stream, and it's kind of cool. You just open it and you punch in the URL and you hit go, and immediately the camera starts streaming to it. It's really cool. It's one of those things you go, this is really cool. I don't need this. Oh, but I'll bet if I really thought about it, I could probably come up with like 100 ways to use it. It's one of those kind of things. It's fun. So this is better than the G9. If you're talking about the GH5 Mark II, then yes. Is Super Chat a thing anymore? I was going to send you some coffee money, but I can't find it. Tyler, I appreciate that. So I don't have Super Chat on this channel because this channel is too young and small to be monetized. So number one, please make sure you are subscribed. This is the new live channel. I do still have the other channel, the main channel, where I do uploads only, and I'm doing live only here. I've split the two for a variety of reasons. I'm not going to get into that now. But that channel is monetized, but I can't monetize this one yet. Eventually we'll get there. Right now you can help by subscribing, and yeah, you can also become a member on the other channel. That always helps as well. Super awesome. Thank you. Hey, now if it would be a webcam, a cheap Raspberry Pi could be the magical hardware to stream armors. Very true. And in fact, I was just chatting with Aaron Parecki this morning about that, and we were and John from Here to Record. We were talking about how we could, from a bunch of GH5 Mark IIs, stream to a Raspberry Pi. Aaron's got a bank of Raspberry Pis. We could all stream to those, and then he could do the switching there. So we might end up doing that. If those guys get GH5 Mark IIs, we might do that. Not exactly the intended use, but, hey, what the heck? Let's just, why not? Nothing stopping you. I asked because a lot of users call the S5 the full-frame GH5. Fair. And yeah, you're right. People do. I probably called it that myself because it kind of is. But yeah, no comparison that I have. Sorry. Oh, I sent me some money on PayPal. Why, Jason, you're the best. Thank you. Joseph at photojoseph.com. Thank you very much. Okay, man, I am like, whew, I'm about to hit the wall here. And look, we're 5 minutes till the end of the hour anyway. I think it's about time to wrap this thing up. So let's just bring this thing to a close. I will see if there's any other last second questions that come in, but thanks as always for watching. Please do be sure to subscribe to this channel as well as the main channel. It's super important to have you on both. I eventually want to stop simultaneously streaming to the old channel, but it's important right now because it does draw people over. It's so funny. The stream settings are so whacked right now. It tells me that nobody is watching, but this is obviously not true. So, stupid YouTube. Okay. Oh, a bunch of questions coming in. All right. Let's see here. Let's bring this back up. And is it good in low light compared to the GH5S? If you're talking about the Mark II, then it will not be as good in low light as the GH5S because the GH5S has dual native ISO. At the lower end ISO, it will be probably the same, but you have dual native ISO in the GH5S, which is kind of awesome. Can the GH5 Mark II live streaming function come to a full frame S series? Well, the hardware is not in it. So there is hardware that is unique to the camera, which is in the GH5 Mark II and in the BGH1, because the BGH1 does these things as well. But no, that would require a whole different camera. Manual Super Chat, your show is awesome. Thank you very much, Tom. I very much appreciate that. Thank you for your time. Thank you for watching. Do you know if after this live stream you'll be a Lumix ambassador considering the time finding? Yeah, true. It's the 3 hours of sleep is my, hopefully I didn't say that in my video yesterday that I did. That'd be bad. Now, if I said that in the recorded video, that'd be bad. I watched it many times last night. I'm pretty sure I didn't. Oh my God. Thanks for our work. Thank you. 51 here. If we're talking about age, I'm catching up to you, buddy. Mate, you've done a superb job. Thank you. Go sleep and refresh. Thank you. I appreciate that. Thanks for the detailed information. Awesome. You guys are the best. Thank you so much for tuning in today. Oh, 51 watchers, Ivan's saying. Thanks. Yeah, my chart shows 0. Stupid YouTube. Thanks, guys. That was awesome. That was super fun. I appreciate it. If you haven't yet watched the videos, go do check those out. They're linked down below. If you haven't yet subscribed to this channel, please do that. Very important to help this channel, blah, blah, blah. You know the routine. And if you're an ATEM user, I got 2 more ATEM mini tips that are in the can. I'm actually going to work on those today, getting those out. And yeah, there we go. All right. Take care, everybody. See you next time. Bye-bye.